Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we'll be talking to a young lady who is used to breaking barriers. She was the first female firefighter in the city of Dallas, and she's going to be talking about why her faith is on fire. That's next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, some people follow the road and some people make the road. And to talk about that today, Sherrie Wilson, she's a good friend of mine. She also happens to be the very first female firefighter in the city of Dallas. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's a 40-year-old story.
Well, everybody's excited when they hear you're the first, but I want you to share your journey because it was not easy, right? Now, looking back, people say, wow, that must have been cool, but you went through hell, didn't you?
Well, you know, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And I became very, very strong based on the things that I went through in the beginning. But, you know, my heart, my purpose was to be a rescuer. And I know that without any doubt. And because of that, it led me down this path. And I also had a lot of faith. I just had faith that, you know, God would protect me and that I was going to knock it out of the park. And so, yeah, I've learned a lot of lessons. I've grown, but yeah, it was challenging. But anything worth having is worth working for. So.
Absolutely. And you wrote a best-selling book called Faith on Fire. We're going to put that up on the screen. Tell us about that book.
Well, the book is basically the journey from the time when I was a child and witnessed an accident and nobody was doing anything, to being angry that nobody was doing anything and telling my dad we needed to stop, all the way following through. And in that is my conversation with God, my faith in that something can be done, and then becoming a firefighter, and then becoming a paramedic, and then the things that I experienced in that. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride in just riding out with us and seeing what it is we face. And then the life lessons. It kind of ends with the life lessons that I learned in the fire department. And some of them were pretty and some of them weren't so pretty, but it was life.
Wow. Well, you and I got reconnected a few years ago through the National Speakers Association because you're an amazing speaker. We've got a clip of Sherrie speaking. Let's go ahead and roll that now.
Hold on to your seats, ladies. Training prepares your mind. Because you have to learn to suck it up, Buttercup. We face negative in business, and we must have the courage to change.
And to see a woman who's gone through what she has gone through and has just been an overcomer, that's such a blessing for me and such a blessing for women in general.
Keep a positive and a determined attitude and study that impossible situation, because inside of it is where you're going to find the answer. Ladies and gentlemen, the first ingredient of your miracle is your impossible situation. Because we're all going to get knocked down, aren't we? And we must rise to the challenge.
Very motivational, just really taught me, you know, when you're in a tough situation, kind of just got to pull your boots up, you know, by the straps and get it done.
You can learn to let the fire burn you, or you can let that fire refine you.
When she was speaking about being the only female firefighter, or the first female firefighter, I knew what she was going through. I loved her speech.
Because they know I can, and I will gut it up and get the job done. Gut it up, girl. Open doors of opportunity for me. In my mind, I am the original gut it up girl.
That inspired me to
So one of the things that they teach you in fighting fires is to improvise, because you can have all the rules and this is what you're supposed to do, but you know, tell the fire that. So you're constantly having to improvise. The pandemic hits. You did some improv there as well, because you have a very successful training company, and you guys are now doing a lot of work related to COVID-19. Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, you know, one of the first things we did, and I hired a professional to come in and run my business, because, you know, I could only take it so far and I needed to go to the next level. And one of the things that we did was we prepared, and preparing was going into the cloud, and people can work from home. And you know, that tornado hit right next door to us, and so that was our first, within a week of moving into our new location, the tornado hit the building next door, and we were out of business for a week. So we flipped the switch, started working from home. With COVID, the same thing happened. All of my employees started working from home, and I was the only one that was in the hot seat, so to speak. I was going in and kept the training business going. They were answering the phones and doing what they needed to do there. And so we operated that way. The other thing is, a lot of training centers across the U.S. shut down. Our training center was still up and running. We picked up instructors in Hawaii and New York, and really grew during the COVID. And so we were prepared, and that was what that professional did for us, is to get us to that point. And I'm free now. I don't have to worry about all the taxes and the this and the that.
Right.
I'm free to do the creative stuff and write the curriculums. And one of the things that we did was we started doing online training. And so I used my master practitioner background to create really interactive curriculums so that people can learn and be engaged while they're online, because that's a challenge. And they're not allowed to check out. They have to interact in these programs, and they really learn a lot. And so been doing a lot of that, and I'm still going on site if they need me, but it's amazing. I go to some places and they practice no COVID at all. I mean, I had 60 people in a class and nobody was wearing a mask. You know, that was in Arkansas. And then I go to some places where a machine checks for your mask, checks for, you know,
Right.
checks your temperature. I mean, all these engineer controls in place. And so I've seen the gamut of that. It's pretty simple. People get their temperature taken when they come in. Our place follows education rules, so if it's 99.5 or greater, you don't get to stay in the class. You can do an online class, but you can't stay in the classroom. And then, of course, social distancing. We've had to cut our classrooms in half, and so we only have half the people, but we're still doing what it is we need to do. And converting to these online programs and things like that has been a huge, it's been a quantum leap for me in so many ways, but it's working.
And you're also a media darling. It seems like I remember you being interviewed back in my Channel 4 days, and you were featured on the CBS Evening News. We've got a clip that we want to just show on the screen. This was about a hand sanitizer. Tell us about this.
Well, what people don't know about hand sanitizer is it's a flammable base, okay? Flammables, hydrocarbons, you know, hydrocarbon based, they respond to static electricity. And literally, most people never read the signage at a gas pump, but if you get out of your car and you pull down on your sweater and you now have some static electricity and you touch that gas pump, you could cause a fire. So most people don't know, get out of your car, touch the metal, release your static, then go touch the gas pump.
Wow.
And that little bitty things like that can make a difference in whether you get burned. And that's what happened. The flammable was, you know, and I have it in my car too, but I keep really small amounts. And, you know, it's just that hand sanitizer, and knowing that it's a flammable product. And, you know, nobody ever takes the time to look at the back of a can of spray paint. And out of the 9 labeling rules that OSHA governs, it's got like 4, 5, and 6 of those hazards on there.
Wow.
And so most people don't really read, they don't really know, and that's what safety is all about, is getting people where they're aware. And so I get them aware by showing them pictures of hazards and then having them analyze and pick out those hazards.
Are people hiring you kind of preemptively, or are they hiring you after they violated some OSHA guidelines?
Well, it depends. Some of them it's just an annual thing where we go out and I do what's called a mock OSHA inspection. So I come in and show you what it's like to be inspected by OSHA. I do the same things they do. I ask the same questions. The only thing that I do that's different is I take a picture of every hazard, I write it up in a plan, I show them what the law is and tell them what they need to do different so that they don't get in trouble. Unfortunately, a lot of times I get hired after the fact, and after the fact means they've had somebody that's been injured, OSHA's out there, OSHA will walk around and they'll go, you better hire a safety professional, we're coming back in 30 days. Well, then I go in and do the same thing, help them get it all cleaned up. And I've seen fines that I would have thought would have been $250,000 drop to like $11,000 because they got things cleaned up and got things the way they needed to be. So they still paid a fine because of that accident, but they didn't get in trouble for all these things that they weren't doing. They just don't know.
Yeah, and OSHA doesn't mess around, does it?
No, they don't mess around. And here's the thing, what people have to understand, it's the minimum safety guidelines. I mean, what they're doing is the bare minimum. There's also best practices guidelines, there's other consensus standards, NFPA, ASTM, ANSI standards, all of that. And so if it applies to them, you know, like process safety management applies to chemicals. And so we take all of that and we put it together for them so that they know what they know what the rules are, and then help them not only with doing the inspections but writing the plans, because OSHA says you have to have it in writing. You got to communicate and you got to enforce. So we do a leadership course in safety in how to talk to people so that your employees are touched, moved, and inspired instead of left feeling less than because they got in trouble.
Yes. Yes. Well, you're amazing. We're going to put your website up to end the segment so people can get in touch. It's emrsafetyandhealth.com. Sherrie Wilson, the first female firefighter in the city of Dallas, and somebody who is still blazing new trails. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.